In my opinion, customer success is another piece of the puzzle of marketing.
Yep.
Because those stories are what you can take to your future customers and also to sales, where they can say like, look, we've done these to these last 10 customers. These are amazing stories. But if you almost kind of like push it to the point where no one's happy, you get no success. And sales will have a tougher time selling. And it's really a very tough balance, but you've got to be open to the feedback loop and always listening and having your hand on the pulse and all of this stuff.
Welcome back to the Thoughts on Selling podcast. Today, it is my pleasure to have Javier Lozano join to talk about all things sales and marketing. Javier, welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me, Lee. Really excited about this conversation. I feel like you and I really aligned on a lot of the things before we got on the show.
Right. I agree. So here's the first question, Javier. Who is Javier Lozano?
I think I can answer that one. It's pretty easy. I am a fractional CMO and CRO, and I have been helping companies that are founder-led, CEO-led type tech companies or tech-enabled services that are looking to scale their business, but they don't have an infrastructure where sales and marketing are aligned, where there's any kind of sales enablement to make sales successful, where their branding and positioning and their messaging doesn't really align with what their growth goals are. And they're looking for a way to start building the foundation where they can create predictable pipeline. I'll come in as that fractional that creates that foundation so that we have a ground to work on and we have a floor to build off of.
I like that. I've worked in small companies, founded a couple, and I've worked in really large companies. And the energy of the small company is so much more fun than, I was going to say safety. There's no safety in large companies. None whatsoever.
Yeah.
The stability. Nope, no stability. What do you get in a large company? You get hierarchy, you get a way of doing things. And you and I both know that we can take those formal ways of doing things into really small companies and get things done faster. But again, there's nothing like the energy of a small company where you have to get stuff done today.
Yep.
Right? When I started a company, I was passionate about what we were doing and I couldn't stop talking about it. And that infectious enthusiasm, that's what drives interest with early customers.
Yeah. When you're in that 1 million, 10 million, maybe 15 million, like every decision you make can be impactful. And it's great. And it's scary because sometimes you can make a bad decision and you're like, oh no, that was not good. But for the most part, when you're thoughtful about how you're doing it, you have more impact in those areas. And quite frankly, like flying by the seam of your pants sometimes, it's kind of how it feels in the startup, scale up companies. Those are fun. It's a different energy. It's just a different thing. And when you're doing hockey stick growth and you're 2Xing and 3Xing, those are just really fun because there's great stories to be told. And sometimes it's one of those where you're just kind of exploring some ideas. I saw this. Let's see how we can make this thing work. And then you just model it and you make it go. So those are more impactful than like the larger ones that are more established where a 5% growth is great. There's nothing wrong with that, but that doesn't work in the startup world.
Right. I was fractional CRO for a company that makes water sensors that go into industrial environments and aquaculture environments, and a very large distributor, probably the largest in the related spaces, Grainger, came to us and said, we want to take your product line on. And everybody got really excited.
Yeah.
And I said, absolutely not, because Grainger was just too big for us.
Yep. Yeah.
That first stocking order would have dramatically strained the organization. Mm-hmm. And it's not a product that sits well on a shelf with 10,000 other items.
Yeah.
And the return of all that product 6 months later would have destroyed the company. Yeah. And I said, we're just not doing it.
Yeah. That's a smart move.
Half the board got it, half didn't. It's like, we're going to focus on regional industrial distributors for whom our product is one of two or three directly probably one of two directly competing with a family of other products that they take into a facility and talk about their entire portfolio, of which we were one.
Yeah.
Lower risk, slightly lower volume, but
you created your own blue ocean by doing that. And when you go in and you start fighting with the sharks in the red ocean, it's the race to the bottom is how I look at it. So I really believe companies need to think about when it comes to growth and scale is like, how do you create and position yourself and create your own blue ocean so that you're competing against yourself? That's basically what it is, and that's the part that's hard because you want to say yes for these big opportunities. These are huge. And then others, you're like, this could literally break us from an operational standpoint,
Yeah. When you're selling software, saying yes to a very large opportunity is not as fraught with danger
Mhm.
necessarily. When you're in services or if you're in hardware, you have to be very careful.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which is more challenging, right? It's tough to scale up with services.
Yep.
It's tough to scale up with hardware.
Yeah. I mean, because you've got overheads. I mean,
Yeah.
that is the biggest thing. You're going to start cutting into your margins,
Yeah.
and that's the biggest challenge. And with SaaS, you've got 90% margins essentially. You can scale to the moon.
I almost put a company out of business many years ago by selling our services way ahead of our revenue.
Mm,
And we were on a 90-day collection standpoint from date of service delivery.
interesting.
And so scaling it up too fast meant that we were paying the service delivery people faster and faster, but revenue
Was not catching
was
up yet.
trailing, right?
Yep.
The revenue was there. It was just trailing. And maybe we
Yep.
could have factored it to done a little bit better. But again, you and I have been through these things before. We see what happens in small, and this was a $10 million company. And they lived through it. They stayed healthy and got bigger, but it was touch and go there for a bit.
Yeah.
Again,
No, I get
all
that.
goodness, but
I totally get that. At my last in-house role, that was a big challenge because we ran a dual marketplace. So we offered a service, but then we also leveraged our network to fulfill the service. And so you could only grow, in unison together. So like if you grew your provider service too big, they would be demanding service that you'd be sending them. And so vice versa, if you grew your customer too big, but you didn't have enough providers to help you fulfill those services, then all of a sudden, like you're going to have customers ticked off. It's a matter of growing these things in unison and being smart. So it's tough. It's not easy. It's a very difficult balance no matter what it is, but a service-based business scaling is not an easy thing to do.
right. So if we take a step up and look at the meta conversation here, what we're saying is sales and marketing are not stovepipes. Sales and marketing and operations are not stovepipes. It's a closed loop system.
Yep.
We as executives need to keep a handle on everything that's going on,
Yep.
right? If marketing tries to grow too fast, sales can't keep up.
Yep.
If sales grows too fast, operations can't keep up.
Yep.
If sales and marketing are not working in sync, nobody's growing.
Yep. No, it's
So let-
exactly it. You've got to have that feedback loop and you've got to be okay with it. As we discussed before we got on the air about marketing tossing leads over the fence and giving the sales and be like, it's your problem now, not mine. I got you the lead. Those days are long gone.
I sure hope so.
Yeah. Should they have existed? Probably not. But like we should be more in a place where marketing is being held accountable to revenue goals, because we can influence it. But marketing is always very aware on other things as well, too. Like, okay, if I keep pushing the throttle on this, like, and sales is closing, we could be really impacting operations where it hurts our customer success.
Right.
And so even though it doesn't have a direct impact directly towards marketing, in my opinion, customer success is another piece of the puzzle of marketing.
Yep.
Because those stories are what you can take to your future customers and also to sales where they can say, look, we've done these to these last 10 customers. These are amazing stories. But if you push it to the point where no one's happy, you get no success. And
Right.
sales will have a tougher time selling. And so it's really a very tough balance, but you've got to be open to the feedback loop and always listening and having your hand on the pulse and all of this stuff.
Yeah. I want to touch briefly on customer success now that we've brought it up. I agree with you that customer success function is an important part of customer delight.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even before customer delight, pulling the customer out of the trough of despair. What did we just buy? Why did we do that? We were perfectly happy with business as usual. Yeah, things caught on fire every now and then, but they were small fires and we knew what to do. Now we've got organizational risk with this new unknown. I've got personal risk with this new unknown,
Yep.
right? I'm going to get fired.
Yep.
And customer success is there to catch the customer in that initial trough of despair and onward. I worked with a fabulous CSM on the Xerox key account at Oracle years ago. Jane Scott, a good friend, was on that account. She was the CSM, and I had her on this podcast about a year or so ago. One of the important functions for the CSM is to be somewhat separate from the pressure of new revenue, right? They're the ones that really hold the customer intimacy
Yep.
in larger accounts, along perhaps with a TSL or a lead account rep or CAD, but they're the ones who are consistent across regime change. And today, we hear more and more companies doing away with the CSM role. What the heck?
I mean, I don't agree with that. I feel as though customer success, let's go back to basic buying. You and I buy stuff on Amazon. You and I will read reviews before we make a purchase, even if it's a $10 purchase or a $100 purchase or a $1,000 purchase. We will read those reviews. Those reviews is customer success, because your product that you're selling is essentially what people are reviewing on. And we have a threshold. You and I don't know what your threshold is. Mine is probably like 4.2, 4.3, but it depends on the product or service that I'm purchasing. If you start dismissing or throwing away customer success as a department overall, I think what you're doing is you're hurting your overall brand, because how I look at brand is I look at it as reputation. It is what people say behind your back when you're not there, when the doors are closed. And customer success is an opportunity to dip into brand and brand building and brand storytelling. So when you have a great success with your customers and they're having great experience and they say these cool things, you can take those exact words that your customers are saying and use that in your brand building, in your advertising, in your sales process, your sales enablement. So whether it's you guys are fucking awesome, you can use that now in your marketing because your customer said that. It's not one of those things people say these things about us. No. Tom at ABC Corporation used these exact words about us. That gives you an edge. That gives you an opportunity where no one else can compete with you. You're putting a stake in the ground. You're competing in your own blue ocean. And so I really believe when companies really embrace success, and they say, it's not just getting an NPS score of this and making sure we get a 5-star review. It's more than that. Yeah,
that's the NPS is a trailing indicator.
Correct. Yeah. So those are great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying dismiss those things, but use those as firepower because you get some great stories. All of a sudden, marketing is like, oh, thank God. I can use all of this. People are using these words. And then sales is my last 3 engagements are this. I sent them these 3 things to kind of get them off of their rocker. And all of a sudden they're re-engaged. It works so well.
From the perspective of the relationship management, and of course, we don't need to worry about relationship management anymore because we can do sentiment analysis on emails, right? And sentiment analysis on phone calls. So we don't need CSMs. We'll just use AI to tell us whether we're doing better or worse, right? Yeah, good luck. So Jane would sit down and have a biweekly conversation with the CIO at Xerox. Mm-hmm. And guess what? That CIO would be saying, hey, Jane, this is what's coming up. This is what's working. This is what IBM is doing. This is what SAP is doing. This is what Salesforce is doing. And they were all vendors. We were one of the vendors in his shop. And those were leading indicators of what's going on, not how a relationship was going alone, but what's going on. And that's gold for understanding, if you aggregate that, what are our customers facing as we do to them what we do, good or bad?
I 100% agree. In marketing and sales, there's leading indicators, lagging indicators. The leading indicators aren't necessarily the metrics that you want to be reporting to the board or whatever, but they directionally tell you where you're going. You're this not only gut-wise feels right, but we're getting this kind of feedback. Let's see what happens in 30, 60, 90 days on the back end of this.
Yeah. Many, many years ago, I asked all of my clients, and at that point, I was running a sales productivity practice at IDC. And so IBM, HP, Oracle, Microsoft, et cetera, were all clients. And I surveyed them all. And I said, what's your favorite sales metric? And there were a handful. IBM said, number of new opportunities put into Salesforce each week. Why? That's kind of a leading indicator of what our revenue is going to look like. It shows something that happened recently. And I said, but why is that so important? And they said, well, it's not the metric itself. We don't use the metric to run the business. We use the conversation about the delta between Jim's team and Sally's team, between Region 3 and Region 4. We would say, why are we getting 2.1 new opportunities per head on this team and 3.5 on that team, or whatever the numbers were?
Yeah.
And the managers would sit down and go through it. And so it was a learning opportunity, not a reporting opportunity.
Yeah.
But a learning opportunity.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
If more sales departments embrace that, that would solve a lot of problems, in my opinion. There would not be a lot of headbutting between sales and marketing because I don't know about you, but the goal is to get at bats. It's like baseball. The more at bats that you're on the plate, the better your swings are going to get. You start getting more predictability. You're and that's kind of one of those areas that I agree. There's a metric that I reported on a lot, and I try to teach my clients this. It's called HIRO or HIRO pipeline, HIRO, which is high intent revenue opportunities. Close to what you're discussing, but we looked at hero pipeline of like, if your sales team is closing anything over 25% or more, then we call this hero pipeline. And so the goal obviously is that you want this to be as high as possible,
Right.
like, and so if it's below 25%, then we have a problem. Either your sales team really sucks, or you're not delivering the right quality leads to your sales team, so they don't have a chance to make this go any better or higher.
Right.
At my last in-house place, we were averaging hero pipeline, I would say in the 40, 50, 60%.
Wow.
And that made me enthusiastic. And we would put a metric to that as far as revenue, be like, this is what the hero pipeline is as far as revenue wise. And if we convert at these numbers, like we've been doing for the past 2 quarters, we should expect this to convert at the end. And so that's a number that I looked at a lot, because that's real revenue that you can actually convert. It's not just kind of like theoretically or whatever, like we've been doing this historically.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that. And the level of high intent reflects quality in terms of marketing, because when you deliver shit leads, your hero number is low.
Exactly.
Right? Mm-hmm.
And not just that, your sales team are wasting time on the wrong type of leads. So they're not getting the right people to go down the pipeline anyways. So that's the other part of the issue, is that if you know how to work the pipeline correctly, and sales teams usually do that correctly, but when you look at it from a marketing standpoint, like that pipeline, you just got to make sure that like, okay, on average, we get this. We know that 20% is going to be garbage, and that's fine. Well, that's just the entrance to come into the game, into all of this. It's a matter of like, what can we average moving forward from these other ones?
What's the difference in cost between a high quality lead and a low quality lead?
Oh my gosh. Like, it depends on the business. So in my opinion, a high quality lead, I think companies should be really honestly average, like looking for a higher quality where they're willing to pay more money, given that their average cart value or whatever they're selling is going to cover those costs. Yeah. But when you're wasting time on these lower quality leads, like that's the part where you're wasting resources.
Right.
You're wasting ad dollars or whatever those are. Like you're wasting marketing resources, you're wasting sales resources. You're going to give probably bad experience, because they're probably not going to close the way you want them to close. And if they become a customer, they're going to probably be a headache. Like there's all these repercussions that happen to that. So a lot of this stuff you're not going to really see on the front end as a dollar value.
Right. At the top of the funnel, selling a Porsche to a Chevy buyer costs the same as selling a Chevy to a Chevy buyer, right?
Correct.
Buying that display ad, it's the same cost per 1,000.
Yep.
But if it's badly targeted, you're going to get shit leads in, and now your salespeople are going to be working on impossible conversion opportunities.
Exactly. And
so
that's
top of funnel, it's essentially the same. So marketing is spending what it's spending, and now all the costs fall onto sales.
Exactly. No, well put.
I started to see sales and marketing organizations talk about alignment, and one of the tools that they used way back then was taking marketing executives and sales executives and giving them the same goals, the same metrics, the same MBOs, the same metrics, the same OKRs to hit. If the salesperson's OKR is to hit 100% of quota, and the marketing person's OKR is to put 1,000 butts in seats, we don't have a meeting of the minds.
I'm all about having sales and marketing get aligned on revenue. How you get there, like, it doesn't really matter. If it's, we're doing it by going to events, okay, great. We got to draw a line to that. But having some sort of revenue goal and revenue target. Now, does that mean that marketing owns revenue? No, it doesn't necessarily mean that. But what it does mean is that like, you shouldn't be championing that you get a bunch of MQLs. You should be championing the close one. You should be championing those things. Then you're going back to sales. Tell me about these 10 deals that we closed. Like, how did they go? Like, tell me the experience and get insights from there. Like, what was it that, made you close those a lot easier than like these other ones? That's the idea. In my take, it's not that sales or marketing has to own the actual revenue number, but they should be going into the game. I need to influence revenue, because this is going to give their, everyone a great opportunity to be successful. And let's be honest, in my opinion, that marketing leader should also get some sort of bonus, commissions or whatever it is, for helping influence and hit that revenue number, because they built the right type of pipeline that allowed the sales team to be successful.
And frankly, Javier, just between you and me today, I'm going to say this carefully, there's no excuse for not being successful. We have the tools.
Yes.
If we have a decent product market fit, we have the tools.
I totally agree. We have more tools today than we did 6 months ago.
Yeah.
12 months ago. I think where the success is going to be mismatched is either you hire the wrong team, or you aren't positioned yourself correctly and people are still confused. So even though you might have product market fit, the positioning isn't quite there. You know, the messaging may not be kind of dialed in. And those are things that you can work on with sales and marketing together to build that out correctly, in my opinion. I agree with you. Like, there's enough tools out there that you should find ways and create automations. You should find ways and create that very amazing customer experience. It's a matter of embracing those things and putting it into your organization and saying, this is the new direction that we're going because this is important to us.
At some level, we always had some of the basic tools, and basic tool number one is common sense. Here's two examples. I brought a cloud-based data warehouse to market with Oracle a few years ago, and the initial Oracle strategy was to sell this to existing customers, starting with DBAs. And the response of the DBA, the database administrator, is, so this is an automated tool that doesn't require DBAs anymore, huh? And they said, so this is putting us out of work, right? Literally, I had DBAs show up at launch events saying, well, I just came to this launch event because I wanted to see what's going to put me out of a job.
Wow.
And, you know, after about 15 minutes of going, why are we selling to DBAs? I said, let's go after line of business. This is a line of business tool, people that need to do analytics, right? Common sense. Don't sell a tool to someone for whom the tool is going to replace them. Well, so why are we all buying AI or training AI? Well, let's leave that one alone. Common sense. Common sense.
I said this to my father the other day. If common sense doesn't belong to everybody, because if it was common, everyone would have it. So I'm not saying that everyone's ignorant. I'm not trying to imply that, but it's just sometimes you got to take a step back. Not everyone really is going to have the same kind of views or world views on those things. And so with that, when it comes to selling to the right audience or kind of shifting, I don't necessarily think AI is really taking over people's jobs. It's a nail gun didn't replace a carpenter. It just made the carpenter be able to put up a house in 6 months versus 12 months or whatever the time frame is. I don't know. That's the way it's looked at. And you're not going to sell a nail gun to a plumber. You know, you're going to sell it to the right kind of person. Go into what you're talking about with your tool, same thing. AI, same thing. I think today, the way we need to operate is use that as a tool to really kind of augment our ability of delivering. From a fractional standpoint, from even an in-house standpoint, where you are, if you can't figure something out, use this tool to help you figure it out a lot quicker. Ideate.
Yeah. I'm looking at the use of AI in sales organizations from several different perspectives. One, on a freelance basis, if I'm a rep, what do I do? How can I leverage ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or anything else as another series of impromptu tools, just like Excel or Word? How do I sharpen my message? How do I better understand my patch? How do I do a better job of talking to the right people with the right message? That's the ad hoc use. Then there's the systemic use of, okay, we're going to give our team a coordinated set of tools, whether it's an AI sales coach like Rainmaker, or where they can do role playing and practice, or Spot Logic that helps with better discovery, or one of any number of other task-based tools or skill-based tools.
Yeah.
And then there's the third, which I'm starting to see where people have built AI functions in the core revenue operations process.
Okay.
Where it's not an add-on like those first two are. It's built in.
I think that's genius in my opinion. I love it because there'll probably be things that it sees that are, I would say, metrics, stats, numbers that you quite can't really pin together. If you have enough data, which I hope you do, you're probably able to go back several months, years, and be like, this is what we've seen trending in these things for revenue. And those things, to me, the MCP piece where you can literally put Claude into HubSpot or whatever, and it can read your entire HubSpot, like in those little pieces, like that's valuable. And that is huge because all of a sudden you're no longer wasting time searching. You're just typing in, this is what I need, find it. And it might take, 2-3 minutes to get it, but those things are great ways to really just start augmenting what you're able to do and create the dashboards and the reports that you're able to do so you can make better predictions into the future, if you will. I think we need to embrace those things.
Yeah. I think I mentioned that my son, as a salesperson in a health management company, fed all of his sales call transcripts into, I think he used ChatGPT, and came out with better marketing collateral. And he reduced his time to revenue. And this is a B2C, with the C being a $5,000 high income individual purchase. He reduced his time to revenue from first call to acquisition by 50 to 60%, like from 3 months to a month or less.
Oh my
70%.
goodness. That's
And
huge.
his conversion rates over doubled
You're kidding.
just by listening to what people were saying,
Yeah.
right, in an aggregated way
Mm-hmm.
and changing the language, pushing the sales verbiage back into marketing.
Yeah.
Now, why is a rep doing that? Why is a salesperson doing that
That should be
rather than this
marketing doing
being
that.
systemic?
Yeah.
Now, my
Well,
son is wicked smart.
yeah, yeah,
I got to say that. But
yeah,
why is he doing that? Why aren't maybe marketing organizations are starting to do this? Marketing organizations should own that kind of process enhancement, right? That should be running full time.
yeah,
Let's look at all our transcripts. Let's look at our marketing activities. Let's also come up with better sales enablement recommendations on the conversation to have with this next customer at 4 o'clock.
yeah. It's interesting because I actually did something very similar. We working some email communication coming out from the sales team. And so, because the sales team were giving me feedback, they're like, we want something a little different. I'm like, okay, let me think about this. I was like, all right, let me take like, I don't know, 100 transcripts of your sales conversations. I'll have it analyzed. I went into HubSpot, ripped them all out, and I'm like, help me figure this out. Like, let's take all the positive sentiment conversations and see what the common things that really made these things work. Because the idea was that we wanted to pull from these transcripts, like, why are they buying?
What's the tribal knowledge?
Exactly. What are these conversations? And then it would explain a few things. And I was like, maybe we should write our emails around this so that whenever a lead comes in, the emails are hitting these spots.
Right.
What was interesting though, is that sometimes the sales team were like, well, I wouldn't say that. I'm like, dude, I analyzed 100 of your calls. These are the things that you're saying. Like,
right.
This has nothing to do with what you would say. Like, this is literally what you're closing deals on.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I just don't know. I'm like, I'm just telling you the data is there.
Yeah.
And so I would say that I'm not saying it didn't work, but what we did is we kind of found common grounds where we were kind of fixing the messaging coming from the sales team based off of like what these transcripts were saying. And what that did is eventually it helped us kind of, create the right kind of workflow for communications at different stages. So if the person went to all the way to almost checkout, the communications to them was a little different because they were about to give us a credit card versus the person that essentially stopped at this page. The communications to them was very different. And so we did this on purpose because then all of a sudden, like, it was really tailoring a lot of how we would reach out to them from a sales perspective because we're meeting them where they are. And then we're also taking our data from tribal knowledge, from like the transcripts, and tailoring those emails to kind of like make sure that we're talking to them in those same kind of ways.
Yeah. The difference today is almost everything, almost every conversation can be transcribed.
Yeah.
Right. Because most of them are recorded.
Yep.
And then you take all that unstructured data and you throw it into an engine. And now you have a simple set of high-level recommendations that have high confidence levels.
Exactly. And I mean,
we couldn't do that 10 years ago. We couldn't do that 5 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, the closest company that I've seen do something close to that is Gong, as an example, and they're amazing. Their product, amazing, bolts on correctly, gives you coaching, all that stuff. But that's the only thing I can think of. And now these things are accessible to us. I'm not saying it's like super easy to implement, but it's become way easier. The technology is there. You just got to think in frameworks and systems to build it out.
The upside is that for transactions that are fairly consistent, one buyer to the next, it's easy to do. When you look at large acquisitions that are revolutionary, if I'm implementing a new ERP system and I've never had an ERP before, right, that's going to take me a year from the time I go, I should do that, to the time I'm signing a contract or more. Then, of course, the first 2 times I try to implement it, it'll fail, but that's a separate conversation.
Correct.
Understanding what an experienced field rep does, right? It's the art versus the science. Much of that art is invisible to us because it's done at dinner tables or ball games or on the golf course or occasionally in an office and occasionally by email and all of the above. And most of that is relationship development as opposed to simple product-based conversations. And even there, the relationship stuff you can take a look at. But it's an interesting time to be in this business.
It is. I love it. I mean, is it scary? Yes, because we don't know what we don't know. And is it going to replace me? I mean, it might, but it's not quite there yet. But at the same time, like, it's exciting. Like, it is. I feel as though this moment is almost kind of, someone had a great example about this. I was talking to like 2 weeks ago when Apple came out with the iPhone and everyone was excited, the iPhone, et cetera, but you didn't have an app store. So for like 6 months or 12 months, there was no app store.
Just a pretty device with no keys.
Exactly. And so he said he was doing consulting and work for a company called YouVersion, which is like a Bible app.
Yeah.
And they were in the midst of closing their doors. And then Apple comes out with the actual app store, and they never turned around since. I feel as though we are in that same inflection point today with AI, where people are creating tools, literally vibe coding in 2 days. On Saturday and Sunday, just giving ideas, and boom, it's there. So it is just a really cool time to be a part of all this. I'm excited. I love it. Like, it's scary. It's unknown. Like, I don't know what could happen. But at the same time, I'm just trying to absorb as much as I can. And I think we should all embrace it in those ways because, yeah, it's weird, but it's Jetson-like almost, but it's not quite there.
I was listening to a podcast that Reed was on, and Reed was talking about how he typically fires off, if he's got a new project, and this is a guy that's got a lot of projects going on, when he fires off a new project, he's got 3 separate AI platforms working on his project.
Interesting.
And at one point, he said, I need to understand how to manage them, because at one point, I realized that ChatGPT and Gemini spent 4 hours saying thank you to each other, and that cost me about $300.
Oh my goodness, that's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
And he said I forget who was the host. They asked him what's the maximum number of projects he had going at any one time. He said 17. Now, Reed is not your typical entrepreneur.
Yeah.
He's been successful and he's wicked smart, as we say in Boston. But, you and I can have 2 going on at a time. And this reminds me of one of my favorite books called Think Better. Here's the short version of the book. There's 2 kinds of thinking. One is evolutionary thought, the Kaizen method. Let's improve by 1% every day or every week. The other is revolutionary thinking of whatever we did before, let's not be encumbered by that. Let's look at things fresh, and we're going to take quantum leaps. The second theme that I took from the book is stay in the inquiry. Keep asking the questions.
Gotcha.
Don't jump to action necessarily so quickly, but keep peeling away the layers of the onion to get to the next level of questions. And when you do that, you get way deeper into the I didn't know that I didn't know that.
Yes. It's funny you say that because I feel as though the best salespeople ask lots of questions. And sometimes they're stupid questions. And like, are you sure this is black? Yes, it's black, Tom. Or whatever it is. But like, what you're trying to do is you're unveiling problems. And I agree with that because I think that's kind of why I get into rabbit holes when it comes to knowledge, what I'm trying to search, whether it's on Google, whether it's on GPT or whatever it is because I keep asking. And I know as a marketing leader and as a sales leader, like I've embraced that where I'm always asking questions, not from a point of like not knowing. I'm curious to see what you're going to say because there's going to be 1 or 2 things you say. You're like, boom, that's it. That's the true underlying problem, or that's the goal that we can go take to market and run with. And so like kind of like what you're describing there, asking more follow-up questions. That is one of the hardest things to do as opposed to always going into like, let's just close this deal. Like, no, let's ask the right questions because that's going to help change everything.
When I was running sales at By Appointment Only, we were working on a big deal with a large new prospect. And Jim, the CEO, joined me on one of these meetings. We were getting pretty close to closing the deal. And then Jim asked a couple of the key stakeholders, what would cause us to fail? What would cause this project to go off the rails? Now, we were success-based. We only got paid if the salesperson had a meeting and the meeting was considered good. And then 30 or 60 days later, we would get paid. And so making sure that those didn't go off the rail was really important. But I never heard that question quite so far up front.
Yeah.
And at first it scared me. It's like, hey, Jim, you're gonna screw up my deal. And no, he was actually making sure that it was a solid deal.
When you step back and you think about that, you're like, okay, these are the things that will make it fail. We just don't do those things.
Yeah. Well, let's make sure we know the path, right? So
Exactly.
our sales leaders don't pay attention to email. Great. How can we communicate with them so that we know what's going on?
Exactly.
Right. Or something simple like that.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. So I love it. I mean, it's just Ted Lasso is one of my favorite shows. Always be curious, never judgmental. That is one of my favorite lines. And I think as a leader, you should always embrace that. Always be curious. Always just ask a little bit more.
Be the goldfish.
Yeah.
We're waiting for the next season to drop.
I can't wait, man. I mean, my wife and I binged on that because I didn't watch it for like 2 years. And then we watched it within 2 weeks or something like that because I'm like, this is really addicting.
Yeah.
And
There's some good leadership learnings there.
Oh my gosh.
Javier,
It's amazing.
what do we want people to take away from this conversation?
We hit a lot of stuff here, but I think the big thing here is that I really believe that marketing and sales need to find ways on how they can align with each other. At the end of the day, those two pieces of the engine is really what's going to create that success. It's going to hit that revenue. I'm not saying operations as account. I'm not saying that customer success as account. I'm not implying those things. But what I'm trying to say is that they have the biggest impact at hitting revenue goals. And they need to be working together. They need to be tight at the hip. They need to be aligned in so many different ways, and it can be done. Like I've done it before. I've seen it done before. And when you do that, it's just a different journey because you're fighting the same battle. You know, in football terms, like everyone's mad when everyone's losing, everyone's pointing fingers. But as soon as everyone's winning and you're winning Super Bowls, nobody's pointing fingers. They don't care what the hell you do because you did your job, everyone's happy. And that's how marketing and sales should be. So I believe that people embrace that. They understand that there is a world there and that they should be striving for alignment there.
Yeah. And it starts with culture as opposed to comp, but comp sure helps.
Oh, yeah. 100%. 100%.
So Javier, this has been a fabulous conversation. If people want to follow up with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, this has been great. I've had a lot of fun just discussing talking shop. So there's two places. First one is LinkedIn. I spend most of my time on LinkedIn. I believe I'm the only Javier Lozano Jr. that you can find on LinkedIn. So make sure you put the junior in there. So connect with me there. Send me a DM if you have questions. Happy to be a resource and help people out. And then you can also go to my website. You can go to bouldermediasolutions.com. And there you can reach out to me. And that way I do have free diagnostic folks download on their own. And it allows them to go through seeing where there's leaky pipeline in their revenue engine. It takes 15 minutes and it gives you like priorities of like, all right, you need to take care of these top 2 or these top 3 items. And this is what you'll be doing. And so those are the 2 places. But otherwise, yeah, like again, LinkedIn is the number 1 place for me.
So 2 things. First, a tweak, and that's Boulder Media, Bolder, not
Correct.
Boul.
Yep. Boulder
despite
like
your
the rock.
proximity to Boulder.
Yep. Exactly.
And 2, diagnosing leaky pipelines. We didn't talk about that, dude.
No, we didn't. We could talk about that if you want.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
So you got my attention.
As I come in as a fractional, I don't just come in from the marketing perspective. I look at it holistically. Instead of giving you tips on how to improve your pipeline and whatnot, like I figure like, you know what? I see a lot of companies where they are doing things operationally. This is what we do. This is how we do it. And they don't realize
how we've always done it.
Yeah. And they don't realize that, you know, hey, like you're doing this, but like you're missing out on these opportunities. And so it's basically kind of keyed around 7 pieces from pipeline. So everything from like, you know, your marketing, your success, your sales, your rev ops, like it's just different elements. And the purpose behind this is that it allows people to start finding out like, okay, I've got some of these things that I really do need to address. And I can't really scale predictably without addressing these pieces because like any ship, if you have, you know, all these little holes, you're not going to be able to keep going. It's going to eventually sink. And I'm not saying the business is going to sink, but scalability does not become a predictable thing. It's not guaranteed. It gives you focus. And that's the biggest challenge that I see a lot of CEOs and founders not having is they don't have the focus of where do we put our attention? And so this predictable pipeline diagnostic reveals where to put the attention versus just, we need to do all these things. It doesn't work like that. You know, when you're creating a true go-to-market motion, you wedge into this is what we're doing and hell or high water, this is how we're doing it. And we're putting all of our focus there. And this is going to help you kind of do that.
Yeah, I love that. And following on with a boat analogy, one of my favorite books is Over My Right Shoulder. Will it make the boat go faster?
Oh, missed that.
Only do the things that make the boat go faster.
Yeah.
Don't do the things or stop doing the things that make the boat go slower.
Yeah. And that's the whole purpose behind that. 2 weeks ago, I'd relaunched this because I've been playing with different, you know, tools out there to help put this out there. And I had someone download it. And immediately they're like, I know what my score is. This is where our problems are. And we were on the phone talking through all of this. And I'm like, this is amazing. I'm glad that you're seeing the value behind this. And it's not going to give you the recipe, but it gives you the direction of where to put your attention. That's really half the battle because sometimes you don't know where to go. And that's going to help you there.
Yeah, it's a great diagnostic. If you had 50 people download the diagnostic and go through it, what would be 1 or 2 common issues you might identify for them?
One of them, it's going to be RevOps. And when I say RevOps, I look at it not just like your dashboards in HubSpot. I look at it as in like, hey, you've generated these leads, but then there's no follow-up. And where are the stages? Like, how are these people moving? And so like, this is a combination of sales and marketing, in my opinion. Most organizations that are much larger have a dedicated RevOps person, and that's great. But when you're in a small startup, scale up kind of company, someone has to put that hat on. And it's like usually 3 or 4 people. And so I would say that's one of the areas that a lot of folks miss, is because they don't either understand the stages correctly and put them in the right stages. And then they don't build communication in those stages as well too, because that's where you can really unveil some revenue opportunities. Like one of the things that we did in my last company is that we built an engine for emails that was generating $1.5 to $2 million. That was part of our RevOps strategy. Is if someone doesn't do this, this is what happens next. And then allowed the sales team to continue to focus on what's going to give us the biggest leverage, the ones that are raising their hands, as opposed to putting their attention to the wrong triggers and the wrong signals and whatnot. So yes, you got to keep the data clean. So everyone's got to update the data correctly, but I would say that's the first one. Another one, I mean, honestly, I would probably say it's probably around positioning and messaging. You know, and this is one that's going to kind of like creep up, because you might think that you have the right message, but is it resonating? Is it drawing in the right kind of traffic? Is it drawing in the right kind of audience? And so
my message is great. I love it. Nobody else understands it, but I love it.
I hear that from CEOs all the time. Well, it doesn't resonate with me. I'm like, last time I checked, you're not signing the checks for all of these purchases that we have. And so we needed to remove ourselves from like what our personal feelings are, and let the customer reveal what makes it, what's interesting to them, what's important to them. That's where, like, as we discussed, the customer success piece of the puzzle, where listen to what they're saying and use that. And then when you start kind of creating that messaging correctly, that will help you. So that's another piece that some folks miss, because if you have the same message as everybody else, you're not going to stand out. You're not going to look any different. You're going to sound the same. And it just becomes more noise. So I would say those are the key ones that I see when people go through it.
Yeah, I love the tool that you use of that self-diagnosis, right? It's free, it's private. They can do it in the comfort of their own home. They don't have to be embarrassed by giving you the answers face to face.
Yeah.
It surfaces where they can choose to get help if they choose to get help.
Exactly. And that's the goal, because it all starts with you self-realizing, self-reflecting, being self-aware of what you need. And then I can do so much in my home as far as DIY. And then other times I'm like, I got to hire a contractor. I can't do this myself.
When it comes to fire sources, that's when I outsource.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's the whole purpose behind that, is to help, these founders and CEOs and leaders to just figure out, I think I have an idea. It's like your WebMD, if you will.
That's awesome. I'm glad we touched on that. We could probably do another episode just on the Leaky pipeline. Yeah,
definitely, for sure. So that's, again, it's awesome, free resource, and happy to help anyone kind of go through it if they have questions.
Yeah. And again, Javier, where can they find it?
They just go to my website, bouldermediasolutions.com. And then if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a button that says download, and it will take you to the page. You can download it right there. Very simple. And it's just like, we'll email it to you as well as give you like the actual download link. So you'll get both access.
That's awesome. Javier, this has been absolutely fabulous. We should pick this conversation back up soon and find out whether AI has replaced us in 3 months or whether it's made us bionic.
Exactly. No, I'd love to have this conversation again. This has been great.
Sounds good, Javier. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another deep dive into the topic of sales excellence and the performance mindset. If you found this conversation interesting, I would appreciate it if you would share the podcast with a coworker or two. And to explore this topic in more depth, send me a note via the contact form on podcast.thoughtsonselling.com, or find some time for us to talk at meet.acellergroup.com. Thanks.